Hi, this is Alex Gonzalez from In Your Face. In this episode, we're going to be reviewing the Northern Invasion GT that happened in Scotland just this past weekend. We're also going to, of course, talk about what's on our phase. So it's going to be a little bit of a simpler episode, but a fun one nonetheless. So enjoy. Did anyone else see that video I posted on Twitter? The girl who was just like, why does necromancy get a bad rep? And like makes a very good argument about like enchantment and alteration sorcery being just as problematic. It's pretty good.
It's necromancy, raising families one plot at a time.
Exactly. Look, you guys have your nice scotch, and I literally made a margarita and put it in a skeleton glass. So our skeleton cup. So Jamie bought this for me, and she got a little spooky one for herself.
Hold up, I'm gonna get more Ice Cube before we record.
I've randomly read like two book series in the last year where the main character was a necromancer.
Oh, nice. It was a. I think as it.
You should send those my way, John. I'd be interested to read it from the perspective of a necromancer.
Okay, yeah, you dig it, yeah.
Yeah, you don't often get that type of thing, you know. Oh yeah, that was the thing. She started off by being like, "Well, first of all, I'm not a lich," but. Oh man, so I tagged Mr. Meth in it and we had some fun.
Yeah, this is a plum lotus hopped cider. It's probably the most beer tasting hopped cider I've ever had.
Okay. I will warn you, I'll send you the thing there, Garrett, but you will appreciate, actually even Alex might, that by, I think it's the second book when his necromancy powers are getting fairly powerful, he becomes more of a bone mancer. And starts making like he can make constructs out of bones, totally like the Ossiarch bone, like literally describing constructs that sound like he was checking out Ossiarch bone reapers when he was writing the descriptions.
I didn't know the Ossiarch bone reapers weren't copying him.
You know, it could go either way. I'd have to look.
How old is this book series?
Ooh, this pretty recent. I want to say 2017.
Okay,
that's a cusp. They were.
That's a cusp. That's a cusp.
Time.
That's enough. That's enough time. Who knows?
Who knows? Because I know GW does their research far in the back.
Oh, absolutely.
Can I share with since we're talking about that? So WoW is getting a new expansion in like a month.
A month. Yeah.
There's a faction in there. They added their entire arm faction looks like Ossiarch Bone Reapers to the T.
No way.
That sounds well. This wouldn't be the first time that Blizzard copied Games Workshop, right? Like, wasn't there a whole thing in the '90s about that?
The Necro Lords, and they're literally
trying.
And they're literally like the art style and like of the skeletons look identical to like Mortek guards.
Oh my God, you need to send that to us. In the meantime, this is In Your Face, everyone. Another episode, another week, as normal. We have a lot of things to talk about. We're going to be talking about Age of Sigmar, as we do every other week primarily. There's some things that are on the workbench here, or on the in the face, so to speak. Jeremy and I have gotten a little bit of a reprieve with the air quality. The smoke was really bad. It was worse than almost anywhere else on the West Coast. Then the rain came. And ironically, there were then flood warnings, flash flood warnings for Central Oregon. So it was like, can people get a break? But thankfully, Portland was spared. The fires are still burning, as they are all over the West Coast. But our AQI, our air quality index, went from literally 520, which was above the range that had previously existed. But, you know, that's, of course, a man-made construct. It went from 520 down to 7 overnight. So that was pretty huge, and I certainly appreciate it. Oh, no, my apologies. It didn't go from 520 there. It was slowly decreasing as the fog was starting to roll in, as humidity was starting to amp up. It went from 378 to 7 overnight, which is still pretty fucking significant, since like the Bay Area's worst AQI was like 199, at least in the primary Bay Area. I know that around there, like, you know, over in John's neck of the woods, it definitely got a lot worse. And then also in like the very, very far East Bay, it got worse. But Yeah,
Are you like
man.
being competitive about how bad the air was?
No, not at all, not at all.
Kind of is.
I have some good friends.
Yeah. Kind
Okay,
of
I will
is.
always. Come on. I found a way to try to make Pandemic a co-op board game competitive. So much so
Oh.
that now, like, my future sister-in-law gives me shit for it. She's just like, okay, so like, how's Alex gonna find a way to make this competitive? But yeah, I have some friends in British Columbia, and they were actually telling me how bad shit was there, and it was even worse because they had their own stuff, and then they were getting the smoke from Oregon and Washington. It was like, oh boy. But yeah, we've actually been able to go outside. I certainly appreciate it. It was kind of weird, hard for me being cooped up for like 2 weeks, not doing anything. Even more so than typical COVID, typical 2020. So that was a little tough. And then I didn't even really have a lot of motivation to get a lot of my modeling done, but I have a hard goal for myself that I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do something negative if something I don't want to do if I don't finish the Seraphon project by the end of September. So I have almost everything ready to go. I'm going to do another just final prime job, and then I'm going to hop on to painting as soon as possible. Problem is, I have that great art book that, John, you gave me for my birthday, and I also been looking at color wheels and stuff, but I'm having trouble and I'm having difficulty on what color I want my mounts to be, because it's one thing to say, okay, I'm playing Ultramarine, so all my bikes are blue, or maybe a different shade of blue with a red stripe because they're the vehicles and the rhinos and the predators and all that. They're all blue. You can't do that for the mounts with Seraphon. You can't say that a fucking pterodactyl and a T-Rex and a stegosaur, they're all going to have the same fucking color scheme. No, like they might have similar war paint, but like they're not going to have the same scheme, exact like coloration, pigmentation, etc. So I'm having some trouble trying to figure that one out. What's up? No. Oh,
Moving my finger.
So I personally don't know, because all my things are going to be orange. They're all going to be very orange based. The brighter the color is going to come to, or at least the how strong the orange is going to depend on what type of more sentient the type is. So like a Slan is going to be almost white, Skink are going to be very, very light orange, Saurus and Croxigores are going to be very dark orange. So there's going to be these variations, and I already have the full scheme put out. I have all my colors. I'm very excited about actually getting them done. The problem is I don't know what I'm going to do yet for the actual mounts themselves, because I know that I can't make them all the same color. Pretty much I'm going to have to do it between some variation between the pterodons being one color, the stegosaur and bastillodons being another color, and then the carnosaur and the cold ones being either two different colors or something slightly similar than the other, like one being juvenile, one being adult. I don't know yet. All I know is that the bucklers, I am going to make more of the traditional, the Stardrake shields, and they're actually called Stardrake shields, all the Saurus warrior kind of shields. And Stardrakes now actually exist in Age of Sigmar. They're the mounts the Celestia Prime ride, and those are usually like a bluish, tealish. So ironically, it's like my guys are going to have shields of the same color of like typical lizardmen skin, which is that bluish, tealish thing. So because I just want them to be the same color as Stardrakes. But yeah, I truly don't know what I'm going to do yet for the mount. So I have to do some soul searching on that one. But besides that, haven't touched the Necrons, been looking at them nervously, and then made myself a margarita day in a little spooky cup. That's on my work, or that's on my face. Woo! John, what's on your face?
Hey, Alex, how the hell have you been, man? So I'll tell you what's been in my phase this week. First off, you mentioned that book, Color and Light, which was, interestingly enough, recommended to me by Seth Amston of Game Castle, and then later recommended to me by Caleb, and then later recommended to me by Israel. So I've had different artists recommended to me that I get the book. I already had it after the first one. And
three grandmasters of the Bay Area.
Exactly. And basically one of the things I find interesting about it is it lets you take a different look at color, which is rather than seeing color as we often do, perceive it as these triads and complementary colors. This teaches you to see color more as a zone. So you have an areas of color, and so you have like an area of color here and an area color here, an area color here, and as long as you're working with the colors in this area, then the colors in this area of the color wheel will also complement well with those. And then the other thing that I really was my personal big takeaway is it talks about reflected light. It talks about that light that's bouncing off of adjacent surfaces and things around. And to me, that was the biggest thing that started to inform not my Ultramarines and Space Marines and shit like that. That's just, easy paint job. I'm talking about like doing my Nurgle and my Skaven and all the Flesh and Age of Sigmar models that have all those, gorgeous sculpts and all those really nice surfaces. And then, understanding that, the light is gonna play off of, wherever your imaginary light source is, and it's gonna hit that lower leg. And when it hits that lower leg, if that lower leg has a purple piece of armor, well, then there's going to be a purple sheen on the underside of the arm. And if you don't, even though you might not see the purple that I put there, if I don't shoot just a little hint of purple there, it breaks the brain's illusion. The brain is so subtle at what it actually grabs onto to perceive as reality. And it's just these little things that, you shoot that color in the shadow. It's just like, the idea that whenever you're doing anything that's a living flesh, somewhere in there you want to have a layer of red. Even if you have blue creatures and blue skin, there is an underlayer and in the shadows of red, because the brain perceives all living creatures as having blood. And in your mind, you might say, well, I'm having blue-blooded blah, blah, blahs. Doesn't matter. We humans on Earth imagine animals with red blood. And because all flesh is translucent, therefore light, shines from an outside source, it partially penetrates skin and then actually reflects from somewhere inside the skin back outward. All light reflecting off of a living creature has a reddish hue that is perceived on a very subtle level. And so if you don't include these little cues to the mind, then you will never perceive something as real. And sometimes it's one of these things where when you look at a model and you're like, wow, that seems so amazing, so lifelike, so realistic. And then you start looking at it like, but actually there's not a lot of detail there, or it's not that great of a paint job. And then you might look at another paint job that is absolutely exquisitely done and miraculous and all this kind of detail, but it doesn't stand out. It's not alive to you. And it's these little subtle things that make the difference between, wow, the wow factor and the, oh, wow, that is very nice. That is a wonderfully executed paint job you have on that. So anyway, so that's my little bit of thoughts there. And just the last thing, when you start talking about the mounts, Alex, just to kind of go through that a little bit. As you know, I did my eel riders, which really are one of the only mounted creatures that I've ever done in all of Age of Sigmar, 40K, really all my modeling. I haven't done like cavalry. I'm just not into it. But for each of those eels, I actually have these. What?
It's a fully painted bike army.
I have but that's not.
He's not talking about.
They're mechanical.
He's talking about an organic mount.
Organic mount. So for each of my eels,
I'm with you.
I actually. Okay.
I follow John.
Okay. So anyway, so yes, I have a bike army, and then I have another bike army, and then I have a third bike army, and I actually have a fourth bike army, and they're all mechanical bike armies. Okay. I want to someday. I'll pull them all out. I'm like, wait, I got this right now. So anyway, so when I was working on my eels, I actually have these catfish that I keep. They're Synodontis catfish from one of the Rift Lakes in Africa. And a friend of mine actually collected them out of the lake. The ones he collected, he bred. And the little baby catfish he gave to me. Yeah. And so I've raised them in my aquarium for these last decade or so. And in preparation for painting my eels, I did a series of photography studies of the actual catfish because they have polka dots going down their sides. And so when I was painting the eels, I actually had photographs of my catfish and was looking at the patterns of big dots, little dots, where are dots in relationship to each other, are there groupings, are they evenly spaced, all these things, and actually put the dots on the eels, again, matching these patterns. And all things considered, I gave up a little bit of my life. I had to actually wake up at like 4:30 in the morning so that my eyes were fresh and paint one half of one eel each day to get through that. That was Israel's advice, because I was talking about stencils and all this stuff, and Israel's like, no, you will hand paint every one of those dots. So I
Dude,
did.
I had the exact same conversation with Israel about something else recently, and I was like, "Well, I could get a template and make that work." And he's like, "Don't you fucking dare! You're gonna do this by hand, and you're gonna like
Yes. Yes. So I didn't like it, but the result was amazing.
Yeah.
Those polka dots and those eels look awesome, if I do say so myself. Nothing. The whole rest of the army will never get painted because I burnt myself out doing the dots on those eels. But by gosh, those dots on those eels look amazing. So anyway, so there's just a little thoughts I have on painting there and color and all that good stuff. As far as what's actually been in my phase this week, right? First off, I forgot to mention, I finished up this book, Saturnine by Dan Abnett. It's one of the Siege of Terra books, right? And I wrote a little review on my Facebook page, and a bunch of friends responded because I have a lot of friends that read. Alex, I know, is an avid reader and stuff, and so I like to talk about these things. But the interesting thing that happened was I had multiple friends message me and recommend books. It's like, oh, John, you read books? Here's a book I enjoyed. And so I've actually plowed through recently 2 books since I finished Saturnine, both recommended by friends. I'm actually on to a 3rd book right now. Yes, I consume books. I am a ridiculous reader. Anyways, and by read, let me be clear, I mean listen to audiobooks.
Your commute to work helps with your consumption of books.
Oh, this is true. This is true. This is true. I guaranteed 10 to 12 hours a week just commuting. But anyway, so recommended by Seth, who we were talking about earlier, I actually listened to the book Devolution by Max Brooks, and it is The Great Rainier Sasquatch Massacre. And
you were talking about this last week, weren't you?
Was I talking about this last week? I think I was listening to it.
He didn't explicitly name it by name. But
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it took me a few days to get through it. Anyways, I got to the end of the book. Amazing. First off, talk about a book that starts off, I was like, I don't know if I can make it through this. And by the end, I ended up listening to the last 2 hours again. It was such good action. Amazing. Max Brooks is very good. But then the whole time I'm like, wow, it's amazing that this whole book, Max Brooks, he does the zombie apocalypse, but zombies are an analogy for, disease or rebellion or all these other things. I'm like, man, this book sure fits with the things that are happening today and the problems with delivery and infrastructure breakdown and economic problems and all these things and fires and everything that's in this book. And I listened to the afterwards, and he's like, yeah, so I wrote this book this year during the COVID-19 crisis, and the Sasquatch were basically an analogy for the COVID-19. And I'm like, oh, come on, Max, okay.
Wait, he wrote the book this year?
Yeah.
Wow. He wrote and published an entire book.
But also that's very on the nose. It's like, oh, okay, shit.
Yeah, well, not to mention like 6 or 7 person cast in the book. It's more like an audio drama than an actual audio book. It's pretty good. But he must have. I say he must have had the basic idea in the past, though, because he did mention that he had to buy the rights to the story back. He had sold the idea as a movie to somebody, and he had to buy the rights back so he could write the book and then adapt it to the modern stuff. He had a pretty long afterwards. It was pretty enjoyable. So enough of John's book, movie, and art time. I'm gonna plow through to my last little bit, and then we'll pass on what's in your phase this week. And I actually got together with my buddy Phil. Hey, what's up, Phil? And first off, Phil and John McCool did the little pepper tasting last week. Was that last week? Man, it all blends together. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what. And then
quarantine has been 12 years. We've all aged 12 years in quarantine.
I can't even keep it straight. But what I do know is that Phil came over on Sunday and we played some 40K. He brought over his Death Guard, crawlers, demon princes, typhus, blah, blah, blah. And of course, I ran my ultramarines, intercessors, aggressors, repulsors, executioners, the whole 9 yards. And we smashed and bashed faces for like 3.5 hours. And the final score was 80 to 76. Pretty close game. I pulled it off with the Ultramarines. And I honestly only won because Phil had one of his characters, I don't know what he was, white, blah, blah, I don't know what he was. Anyways, he moved him up off the objective to give like re-rolls to a unit that was shooting at me. And I'm like, dude, you just lost that objective, and that 5 points cost him the game. So it was amazing. Good game of 40K. I'm having a lot of fun playing the new 9th edition. A lot of fun. So good stuff out there. And that, I can't imagine going on. I got like 6 other things on my notes here, but I'll save them for next week. It all blends together. I won't know if it happened this week or last week anyways. So with that, Mr. Garrett, what has been in your phase this week? Tell me that you've been phasing into your new worlds and continuing a little of that cool world building. What was the planet called again?
Alligar.
Alligar.
Yeah. So before I get into my phase, I have comments on John's because it's not a John phase if you don't have a plethora of comments. So first of all, I want to talk about the Color in Light book. I'm actually really impressed with your guys' recommendation. I'll probably be buying that for my wife because she is the.
It's got a cool feathered dinosaur on it.
And light, yeah. So I'll definitely be looking for. Yeah. There you go, Color and Light. I'll definitely probably be buying that for my wife because she's the resident artist of the family, and I think that will help. I'll probably get recommendations from her, and I just think she will do a good job. And I'm actually going to be showing off a bit more of her artwork today in the new maps I talked about last week. I was able to show it to the crew after the show last week, but I was able to get some screenshots, and I'll be throwing it up as my virtual background this week to talk more about the world that we have been building. Second, John with his most John-like stories ever of his brother catching catfish and raising them and then using them for a photography class.
Right from a river in Africa.
From a river in Africa. Like,
shocking. As a
forever,
surprise to no one.
Like the moment I met John and I drove down to San Diego with him for an 8-hour drive where he didn't shut up for 8 hours.
Oh, shit.
No one asked him to shut up because he talked for 8 hours straight. It was me, John, and Casey Dunn. Good friend Casey. John talked for 8 hours, and we realized John has a lot to say, and he is literally one of the most interesting people you'll meet in your life. I can never stop talking about how interesting John is because also the way he tells his stories. It's just like, how can you?
You're a very good storyteller.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
His brother in Africa getting catfish, raising them, and then taking a specialized photography class to get the polka dots to paint his models. Like, who does that? Who does that?
I thought everybody does that. I thought that's just how people are.
So, yeah.
Sorry to disappoint you.
Those are just my I feel like I go after John just because I then wait until John is done and then I make my many comments on John's phase that I have to make because anyways. So in my phase this week, I have actually done a lot more work on my world. So in my weekly D&D campaign, my crew has reached the point where I'm actually basing my campaign off of the Pathfinder Kingmaker adventure path from back, I believe it's in like 2012 to 2014. Around that is when that adventure path came out, and I really liked the idea of exploration and then building a kingdom because my wife is a geographer, and a lot of our group, my gaming group, are also geographers because they're her work friends and things. So I wanted to create an exploration campaign where I had a map and they got to explore the tiles, see the different features, and feel like they're actually going into the world and being adventurers, geographizing and going and exploring and creating maps and things like that. And so that was my goal. And so the Pathfinder Kingmaker adventure path from Paizo was a very good basis of how I could get the mechanics for it. And then, but now we've reached the state where they are starting their own kingdom. So I've had to spend probably the last 7 days reading up on the kingdom building rules and figuring out. I know I am a numbers guy. I love complex mechanics. It's one of those. I play Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition because it's a wonderfully streamlined game that's really easy to pick up and play, which is great for all of my players. While Pathfinder 2nd edition is a hardcore number crunching game that would probably interest me way more. But I have dumped a ton of money and energy into D&D 5th edition that I'm playing 5th edition and I love it. but I love complex mechanics. I'm going to be bringing them in full force. And here's my way of doing it by bringing Pathfinder 1 edition rules converted into D&D 5th edition. So that's been my wonderful goal of trying to do that this last week. And as part of that, one of the things I've done is I've started to draw my existing kingdoms in my world. So let's see here. In my
are we gonna? Is it graphic time? Is it presentation time?
Graphic
Very
time.
nice.
So
Graphic time.
I could either share my screen, but I've created a handful of
Make your background.
Yeah, I'll just do my background.
You can point. You can point to things.
Yeah, so
Like a weatherman.
Like a weatherman.
Oh, there it is.
Here's our new world.
Oh shit, dude! Last week you showed us an image of your new world. It was either during or after recording. And
it was after recording.
It was there. It was solid. It looks very similar to this, but it didn't have the shading. It didn't have the coloration. You didn't have like grassy knolls and acrid deserts and Arctic. Look at that.
Archipelagos. Yeah.
Oh, look at the archipelagos.
Yeah. So this is an archipelago that I have. So this is the continent that my campaign is going off. My wife is going over here in Sheador. Is it flipped for you guys as well?
No, yeah, that's how it always is, unless you do the weird camera reverse thing.
Do I have to do it via the image?
Sheador.
You have to have set your camera up, I think, before you start.
Mirror my video. There we go.
There you go.
There we go. Oh yeah.
Sheador sounds a little familiar to me.
Oh, whatever. It was a randomly generated name. We are terrible at naming. We use fantasynamegenerator.com. It's a
That's
wonderful
why.
Yeah, I just generate the crap out of it.
Do authors use that too?
Oh, probably. It's an amazing.
Oh my
website.
gosh.
Yeah. So
that explains derivative names.
So yeah. So this is where we're taking place. So I've created the continent of Solaris. This is where all of my stuff. My wife will be taking over Sheador and Eros. So this is our continent.
That's nice. I think of Solaris as the BattleTech arena planet.
Or the really bad sci-fi movie from like 4 years ago, but like it's a very bad movie.
So let's see here.
Or a failed solar panel company.
Yeah.
Oh, that too. Oh shit, big time. Bay Area one. Why is it called Solaris? Why is your continent? Does it get a lot of sun?
Sure, why not?
But Solaris was an online MMO arena BattleTech in the mid to late 90s. Thousands of players logging into this. You could go to different battle environments. I forget the number. It was like 4-on-4 PvP mech battle. It was awesome.
So this is part of what I was talking about. I want to get my wife the color and light book. It's because she's put a really great effort into the.
Wait, Garrett, what's below Ethereal Desert? Can you keep going lower?
I know.
Don't let him mess with you. Don't let him mess with you.
Oh my god.
This is about to get rude if you
green screen to produce.
I know. So this is why I wanted to just screen share at this point.
This is great. No, this is much better.
Is that where the lonely mountain is, where the Hobbit lives?
Sure, why not? Anyways, this area over here is where my campaign will be centralized.
Nice.
On this coast over here. So
it's kind of like a marshy area I see, and then there's like an archipelago, like you said, off the distance there.
So, but yeah, as I was saying, like my wife has actually better color theory than I do, and so I think getting her color and light will just help a ton. So
Nice.
This is a zoomed in version of Solaris, and then
Tarathiel Woods.
Is that a cool name? I like that. I like the Thrakus Peak.
So
it's very elven sounding.
Yeah, I have a. Let's just get.
Oh wait, what's the coloring all about?
So those
Is it going to disappear?
I feel like I'm playing the city game where I'm setting up my zones. I got an industrial zone and a residential zone.
No, this is where the British Empire splits Africa.
Yeah.
Oh right.
So I've set up. These are my kingdoms I've been creating. So I've drawn their different borders so that they will know which political factions that they'll be interacting with.
Got it.
Oh nice.
And fiefdoms.
Yeah, well, actually, these are kingdoms, and then I have to then drill down into the kingdoms and create the fiefdoms
Right.
inside the kingdoms, and that's my next tax.
Not to make this a D&D podcast, but is this high fantasy? Is this low fantasy? What's the
High.
world that you guys are creating? High fantasy. I did a D&D session with our buddy Ben Viscara, and he was a great DM. He was incredibly hard. It was like immediately hard mode, and I was like I was very aloof in how I played, and he was very brutal in how he was, but he played in like a low fantasy setting. So I like this. Okay.
It's neither, Alex. It turns out the entire campaign's in outer space. And this is just
Solaris! It's all a simulation.
Well, it's a battle arena. I'm loving it, Garrett. You know, it's funny. Garrett was actually spending some time last week showing us kind of the software behind this this world builder and all of that. And,
yeah, it's cool.
And I'll be honest with you, it almost looked fun to go in and build. Like, I don't know that I actually want to run a campaign with people or anything, but to just go in and do some world building and stuff.
Wait, do you have a Google Map? Do you have a Google Map pin on your world?
Yes.
Why?
Because in the software that we're using, you can, all of these maps I took screenshot from our interactive maps that we have in the software that we're using, World Anvil. So these are all actually draggable interactive maps. So those colored things that are on there, those are actually a setting. If you want to, I have a selector up at the top. You say, I want to view kingdoms, and it'll then show the kingdoms. You can hide them. So they're like these cool data visualization mapping tools.
Yeah.
And I can add different layers and things that you can then add.
So you could be a weatherman.
Yes, I straight up could be a weatherman.
Great weather. What I'm saying is, this sounds fun. Like world building sounds fun. And then if you're like have an idea for writing some stories or stuff like that, you know, creating a software like this and then using it, building the world and then writing your stories within the world. Or if you're trying to do like even like 40K or Age of Sigmar campaigns, you could build a portion of a realm inside of software like this and start laying stuff out. Like I was really fascinated by it's World Anvil, right, or something like that.
So World Anvil is the tool we use for organizing all of our world rules. Like we actually spent a long time developing our calendar. So we actually have a 2-moon cycle where we have 2 different moons, that one is a longer cycle, one is a shorter cycle, and they match and they meet each other 2 times a year at day 0 and halfway through the year. So one has it's a 300-day year with 30 months at 10 months a year, and one moon has a 50-day cycle, and one has a 30-day cycle. So on day 150 they meet, and at day 1 they meet. And so we've created this kind of like moon cycle, so it can do things like that. So World Anvil
with your rational, logical calendar. This is
because that fantasy. Totally makes sense.
I want to have like a 6-day month because that represents the festival of Hayum, and then followed by a 75-day month.
Yeah, so you can do that. Like World Anvil is this wonderful software that we've learned that you can customize the crap out of your world, do all these crazy things. They're currently in development of building seasons, adding seasons to your calendars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they do, and then Wonder Draft is actually the software we use to make these maps, and that is just a software that has a bunch of tools. So all these like crazy.
Is that a plugin? Is that a plugin for World Anvil?
No,
it's a totally separate software.
Totally. So World Anvil, for the maps, you just upload an image, and then that they create coordinate planes on top of the image you uploaded, and so you can base off the zoomed in distance and all that stuff. So all of the maps, all of them, even the zoomed in versions, were drawn via Wonder Draft. So these these crazy edges here. So Wonder Draft has this great feature, and all these archipelagos where you can raise and lower sea levels, and they do it in a very non-linear fashion, which is kind of like done it in this you can change the density level and the sharpness of how much you want to raise or lower your water level.
Oh no, these are beautiful. If for anyone who's not watching the video, you're really missing out on these backgrounds. I mean, for me, it's like I've picked up a hardcover book in the mid '80s, and I've opened up, and there's that little watercolor still at the beginning where the author kind of drew out the world of theirs, and you go in, and that it just has this feel of those maps you get at the beginning of really high quality fantasy books. I mean, I dare say Lord of the Rings. But that would be too cliche.
Yeah.
But a lot of the fantasy books that we read will have these kind of maps.
Honestly, cliche away, I can't tell you how often, like, I read Return of the King when I was in high school, and I stopped after 100 pages because 99 pages was a fucking horse ride. And I was like, I'm done with this. But so often you have to, like, go back and be like, okay, so that's a reference. Where the fuck is that? And you have to go back to
Right?
the map. I dig that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just changed view. So if you click on the Google Map pin, it jumps you to this map, Alex. So it zooms in, and this is what my wife has created. As
So are there mermaids in your lake, in something on lake?
I don't know. This is my
Million on Lake?
wife's. This is my wife's map. I am not doing this campaign.
But there are 3. Oh, well, now it's all just okay.
Yeah.
Well, they wouldn't be mermaids if they were in a lake, right?
I need to see
They'd
below
be
the southmost.
free maids.
Yeah.
Free maids.
Trap maids. Salmon maid. I don't fucking know.
I hate this so much.
All of this.
No, all of it. I think the world building is cool. I'm just
Yeah.
giving you grief because, like, I'm still in my, like, I'm still not old enough to be like, because like every time somebody brings something in this, I'm like, this is amazing. I could totally import this to wargaming, and I'm like, fuck, I'm turning into a narrative player. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
The call of the narrative, Jeremy.
No,
it
hold on,
speaks
Jeremy.
to
Hold
your
on, Jeremy.
soul.
So Wonder Draft, the mapping software, you can apply a hex grid on top of your map in the software and like place it around and size it, so you can create your
hex grid
narrative map with a hex grid to then create a narrative campaign about taking over different territory in narrative battles and have different points of interest placed all over the place.
Or I could just play Total War 2. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. In fact,
So,
we've actually talked about starting a Total War 2 campaign.
Oh yeah.
We got to figure that one out.
That's basically been most of my phase. I haven't done a lot of things other than doing a lot of D&D planning for all the campaigns that we got going, because I don't leave the house anymore. So why not just run 4 different D&D campaigns a week, right? So that's what I've been doing. But yeah, so Jeremy, other than now wanting to plan a narrative AOS campaign, what do you have going?
I think if you catch me running a narrative campaign, A, I must be kidnapped and it's a doppelganger. B, something has gone terribly wrong.
Well, a lot of things have gone terribly wrong this year. So
I'm just saying, if you see me running a narrative campaign, feel free to like shoot me in the leg just to see if I bleed red, because I'm pretty sure I'm
Shake the shit out of you, because I don't want to play a narrative campaign.
There you go. It wouldn't change the score and you'd still lose, but don't worry about it.
Hey, I do remember you tabling me, getting 2 full turns to score on TTS, and me still beating your ass. So, totally misplaying my army. Still did it. Now, I understood you wrote a whole article about how Lumineth don't work, but don't fucking
Lumineth
come
are
at me
bad.
sideways.
He also
That was
conveniently
not
forgot.
sideways.
He also conveniently forgot he lost every initiative roll the entire game.
Roll better. Roll better.
That's true.
Don't start none. They ain't going to be
Strategy
that.
of every AOS player and 40K player. If you roll better, you're going to do better.
That was the story of my 40K game this weekend, that's for sure.
No, my phase has been much like the moon, transient. I've done a lot of like different things. I've been hobbying a little bit. I finally got most of the rest of my Lumineth, which I find very hard for me to have the willpower to build an army that is fucking terrible. But I'm going to do it. And then I have assembled a tech list.
Oh, boy. Look at that.
Oh, wow.
It's,
You went out and dropped the 170 on tech list.
Damn right I did. Because if I'm anything, I'm a completionist.
A completionist. I love it.
And I magnetize them so it comes off the Selenar.
Nice.
Sexy.
It's not exactly a pretty magnetized. Originally, I had like a small magnet that fit perfectly in the gap they put in the wing where he gets glued on, but it just wasn't strong enough. This model Techless is actually fairly big and heavy for like he just looks way when you have him by himself, not on the Selenar, he is actually like twice the size of an elf.
He's like
So he's a fairly big model by
So
himself.
he's like a Lariel.
size.
Lariel is like massive.
Oh yeah, Loriel's gigantic.
She's thick.
Yeah.
She's taller
So-
than a Kurnoth.
So I've been assembling some Lumineth. I got a couple more games of TTS, and I got a game with my Jaws and Mork, which was exciting. Played such a fun army to play, but it's also like a very one-dimensional army, which is, it's cool and bad. Like it's cool to have a bunch of squigs and playing Gloomspite, which is not an army you see a lot of on the table. So hits my butterfly checkbox. But then at the same time, it's like every game comes down to, is this a turn I dedicate my charge base and send in all my squigs and maybe win the game? So it's a little like there isn't as much shenanigans as you can do like if it's like a regular kind of like Gloomspite heavy, non-squid heavy Gloomspite list. But it is, they surprisingly hit very hard with the new battalion and the mortal wound output they generate on the charge. If they get the charge off, they can compete with some of the hardest unit in the game. So it was a nice enjoyable game. What else? Oh, I did the AOS 40K stat show, so that came out on Monday. Should be for this Monday, which was the 20th. The 20th came out, so it's for the first inaugural episode. So go watch it and tell me how terrible I'm doing of a job, and I will ignore it. So don't worry about it. And then pushing through, I'm looking forward to playing in Garrett's new TTS event that he's going to be running coming up soon. Don't know what I'm going to play yet. Probably not Lumineth, but who fucking knows at this point? It's just kind of like got to just put myself in a coffin somewhere. I made this dedication. I might as well try to actually play it well eventually. But other than that, yeah, that's been my phase. I've been creeping a lot on Twitter, or lurking a lot. Creeping is that the same term as lurking?
No.
Creeping is
damn it.
like you're actively looking for, like, I don't know. You're being
There's something
creepy.
creepy going on when you're
Yeah,
creeping.
is there something creepy?
Well,
if
there
you're
was definitely
lurking?
something creepy going on in Twitter sphere for AOS. Mostly in the fact that we have like a new rising star of basically AOS stats in the name of JP. I think it's just JP actually. That's just his first name. He had a quite interesting interview for all those who haven't watched it with Honest Wargamer about like meta breakers, or like what he defines as meta breaker armies, which is
this is that metabreakers.to website.
Yeah,
I was looking at that. That's pretty cool stuff.
I wish he didn't call it meta breakers because they're not breaking the meta. They're just what he's calculating is armies that played by players that perform outside of the norm, right? He's basically measuring outliers for non-statistician people. That just means he's able to identify and capture people who are doing above average effectively. He does have a cool statistic, which is armies that have the ability to win more, which, I mean, you're like, well, Jeremy, that's just people who have the highest winning rate. No, he actually breaks it down a bit lower. It's an analysis based on like faction playoff. So with the way I would describe it as, it scores itself based on how many times that faction has beat another faction. And then it comes out to like a universal kind of average and stuff.
I like that.
Like a weighted score is what we're talking in some ways. A weighted.
Yeah. You could define it as a weighted score, and it's used mostly in the chess world, but it's also like it's a good measure. Like it's a good simple analysis to use for like that what he's doing, which is basically saying like which armies like perform just consistently better. And surprisingly, Kale was the one that came to the top. In fact, so much so that his new one recently today or yesterday was about like the number of points like armies usually win by, based on that outlier scenario. And Caradron Overlords were like winning by like 25 points more than than most of them, which is a lot, by the way, in AOS. By the way, AOS games don't go to 100 or 85 or anything. He just uses, I think, 100 for his math, or 75. I forgot. He either 75 or 100 for his baseline.
I can't think of a single game of Age of Sigmar where I was like, yeah, I had 100 points.
No. What you do is you take the maximums. If I may, Garrett, and I imagine you're about to say the same thing. You take the maximum possible score for a mission, and then you convert that to 100. So let's say you can get 25 points on a mission. Well, then each point now counts as 4. But let's say you could get 20 points on a mission, then each would count as 5.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good way
I actually think it's probably based off of the Warhammer World scoring pack, which is out of 100.
Oh, is it? That makes sense.
I would assume so, because I think a lot of British tournaments, which I think most of his data comes from, use the Warhammer World scoring pack, which is out of 100, and you get like 60 points for a major win, and then you get the 5 points per hidden agenda, or the auxiliary objectives as they're now called. So it's 15, so I guess 75, and then there's 25. Like the pack that is in the General's Handbook does go to 100, which is 5 points of soft scores, or 5 points of sportsmanship, 10 points of paint, and the rest battle points. And I think that's what a lot of I think that's what a lot of British tournaments have. I've noticed that a lot of tournaments out of England score out of 100 on battle points, and I think that's due to all of the many factors, whether that's soft scores or no soft scores. But I've noticed they do tend to have higher battle point scoring than US events, which usually score out at about 30.
Yeah. So cool stats. I look forward to, like, as I'm doing the 40K ones, it's cool to see somebody else taking an approach for AOS. I do wish we had a little bit more granularity in the AOS, like
yeah, if it's just Britain, if it's just the British meta, that's not a European, Australian, New Zealand, American,
It's just an issue of, I think, I've said this a lot, is I wish that tournaments like 40K, where we now have a universal standard of how to run missions and how you're supposed to score events, and everyone from Australia CanCon, London GT, LVO to Adepticon, and Nova have all agreed to
Adepticon doesn't count.
Adepticon does count. They have 280 people in their event.
I don't know.
But it's not a competitive event.
It is. The Adepticon 40K GT is a competitive
event. Yes, that's correct.
But my point is that all of those tournaments have agreed to, they've already announced that they're going to use the 40K missions and scoring metrics. So now we have a universal scoring system that we can now do stats on, and AOS has the lack of that, which is frustrating. That's all my point, is that there's no consistency in AOS scoring metrics, so it's hard to get a breakdown of, like, how many points does somebody get, because we don't have a consistency on that.
Yeah.
Hold on. I hate to interject.
Oh, you hate that, do you?
I hate to do it.
He hates when we interject on him. That's what he hates.
I don't consider Adepticon GT to be a competitive event. Granted, I share.
You're wrong, but okay.
I would hope to be wrong. But
well, you don't have to hope. It's there. You're wrong.
Okay, let me rephrase it. It has no bearing on a competitive campaign, league event, whatever.
They submit to the ITC as a 280-person event.
Yeah, it just takes like 9 months to submit it for some reason or another.
Right away now.
It's because Adepticon doesn't want this to be their premier event. They want.
It's not Adepticon. It's not Adepticon. It's an I'm going to shut up now. Yeah.
You're being stymied. Alex, I hear you, brother. I hear you.
We're on the same page.
Garrett
y'all
might
can
be
read.
talking about 1 year of it being better and ignoring a decade of something else.
Yeah. But that 1 year.
Garrett. Jeremy's being facetious because he knows me, but you should know. I mean, you know me too, but, like, you should know better to not. You need to read between the lines.
I know.
You need to read between the lines.
I know one of the chief and orchestra, or chief man. His name is Alex Gonzalez. I think he can clarify this for us.
That's why we got to take anything you say with a grain of salt, Alex. It's like, it doesn't matter how valid what you say is. It's automatically tainted by some kind of weird fucking doppelganger salt. If there was a John Feuerhelm running events somewhere else in the country, okay, and then I might get offense at that too. But you know.
I want to clarify.
Luckily for the record, the only other John Fuhrhelm out there is a semi-pro wrestler.
Then like you need to fucking. I would milk the shit out of that.
You need to get into wrestling, John, is what he's saying.
Myself and Dayton, our friend of the podcast and host of Part of the All Points, he and I, we decided that if LVO happens and if one of us doesn't get into the top 8, shocking, then we would do the doubles tournament, and he and I will dress up as Hulk Hogan and Randy Macho Man Savage, and I was like, I need to be Savage. I just need to act. And if I do, I'm just going to like not sleep, drink way too much coffee, and just like act like the coked out Savage where he's like, oh yeah, like I this handshake. This is too much power here. Like, I don't know. This is really making me nervous. Like,
You need
that
that
too well.
You'll lose your voice though.
Oh, absolutely.
As if he doesn't anyways at every event.
Yeah.
Anyways, I was talking about 40K, not like the 40K Adepticon event is a competitive GT.
No, this is an AOS episode. You can't be talking about 40K.
Fine.
Burn it to the ground.
Anyways, Jeremy, go on. Talk.
No, I just wanted to point out, I love the fact that the community is getting more and more stats people into it, and especially somebody who has a very good and unique perspective on how to visualize the information. So I will be honest though, caveat, because Jeremy can't like something but not liking a part of it, because that's how every French person is born. We are literally given that mandate, and we have to revoke our citizenship if we don't follow that rule. So it's true. You don't have to
We get it, Jeremy. You're a complex individual. You're a complex guy. We got it.
It's all curds and whey, but
He knows that coins have 2 sides.
That's right. One of the things I think is the story he wants to tell with the data is that you don't have to play the top army to win games. You don't have to play the top army to have some recognition online. You can play a not top army and do still well as long as you're really good at playing that army. And this data shows that there are these outliers out there, and they do exist. And that's great. But those are, once again, outliers. They do not represent anywhere near the majority of the players. And I feel like it might be used as a way to excuse bad books. Sorry, I'm going to rephrase that. A way to excuse perhaps underpowered books or underpowered releases. And I'm not saying this because I shit on the LRL like a week ago. I'm just saying I don't want it. Like, it's cool for everybody to have their own personal goal to strive for. Like the guy who's going to be playing the 100, what are they called again? The Sigmar guys, the flagellants. Like, he's doing it for himself.
flagellants?
Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
They're called
Flagellants.
Did I pronounce that wrong, or is that just Alex being an idiot?
No.
Okay.
He's just
The
confused.
fantasy words, you can call them whatever you want.
Excuse me.
Sometimes I don't know. People like to make me sound like I'm more of a foreigner than I am. So, anyway.
You make the foreigner joke, but like you're opening it up.
Yeah, you drink your margarita, whatever you drink.
Bone juice.
But Jeremy, to be honest with you, I grew up in the Bay Area. I hardly even notice your accent.
No way, the Bay Area.
He's the
beat it
one who
out of
brought.
me,
Oh,
too,
for the
so.
record, he's the one who brought up his accent. No one else did, but
You did.
That's fine.
By questioning my pronunciation of flagellant.
No, I think Alex was confused.
No, you said
with the fact that
pronunciation
flagellants.
I was trying to respectfully let you know what the correct pronunciation was. You were the one who went at me sideways. So,
Well, let me hatefully interject.
Thanks.
Ooh.
As Europeans like to do.
But the long story short is, I appreciate the data and what he's doing. I just don't personally like giving a platform to effectively say, like, these, you can chase this, guys. You can, in ITC, people are like, I'm chasing ITC points. Or people in overall, they're chasing the win, right?
Yeah.
This is not chasing the win in a sense. It's chasing this theoretical win with a bad army. It's basically I would like to participate in the Olympics, but I'm going to shoot myself in the leg and run the 100 meter the day before, right? Kind of like situation where I'm self-sabotaging my opportunities.
But I want to be the best of the guys who shot themselves in the leg. Don't you know?
Yeah, which is great.
Well, it's more like saying who does the best with their army except when they're up against a bad matchup, right? As long as we take the armies that normally kick my army's ass out of the equation, how well do I actually do? It's kind of a thing, and you know, I don't know. It's an interesting, different look at a metric, and I'm one that says I like having lots of different things to chase after. I mean, let's face it, I was never chasing after best player in the ITC, unlike two of my co-hosts, but best of faction in the ITC, something I was able to win twice, right? So it's about having different goals out there for different people to achieve. And the more different ways that we can, and I don't want to talk about participation awards. Like, okay, that got a lot of bad credit. I don't know if anyone ever got one. I certainly know my kids never got one, and I never got one as a kid either.
I did.
So what the hell? You did, really?
I got one.
Yeah, I did.
Wow. Did it actually say good, thanks for participating, you dickhead?
I mean, we got last place in my soccer league, and I still got a fucking trophy.
You got
so, yeah.
Oh man, you are perpetuating the stereotype.
Okay, so you know
of
what?
all those.
So not only did I get last place, my team got last place in the PAL league. Actually, when they started the PAL kind of tryouts, they actually segregated and took all the bad players from all the different teams and made a special bad player team, and that's the team that I was actually on.
That was
I was literally on the Bad News Bears of the PAL Soccer League.
Holy shit, you were Bad News Bears.
And then we went out and got our asses kicked by every other team in the league, every single game for the entire season. And at the end, everybody said, "You fucking suck."
Yep, that was my team. We got
no participation award though.
No. Yes,
no participation.
All of that plus a trophy and a pizza party. Okay.
What?
Dude, that is.
We literally got told you suck.
Oh shit!
So did we. So did we.
I don't
cruel.
understand. It's a cruel world for sure, but just like roll better. Like just go
Anyways,
roll better.
John.
So anyway, so that said, right? That said, winning is not winning. And ultimately where I think the false hope that Jeremy is actually talking about with this kind of a rating is that, yes, if you're really good at a shitty faction, that's amazing. But honestly, if you play a shitty faction, you better be okay with losing. Like ultimately, you have to in your heart say, I enjoy interacting with other people. I enjoy time at the table. I enjoy whatever fucking weird narrative is going on in my head more than the fact that every time I walk up to the table, I lose a game, okay? And we're not talking about being competitive or over competitive, okay? We're playing a game. If we're playing Liar's Poker and the entire game is me sticking one card on my forehead and you're sticking one card on your forehead, it's still a game and there's still a winner and a loser. And if you're okay with losing every time, well, guess what? Then play a shitty army. If you're not okay with losing every time, then guess what? It's pretty easy to figure out what armies are good in AOS, and it's not on this list, but it's every other rating list that's out there where you can go and say, oh, look at that. That list, that army that won these 7 GTs in a row with different lists and different players, maybe that's the faction I should play if I'm not okay with losing all the time.
Exactly. I mean, like, it's so funny to see the fucking the ratio or the.
For once, it's not me cursing for the first time in this show.
Whoops! It's almost like the margarita let me do that, but yeah.
Bone juice?
The bone juice. Yikes! Yeah. Well, I did say that first, so I understand. Yeah, that's my bad. That's my bad. But when it comes to like underdog armies, there is something to be said about playing an underdog army. I mean, like you can do well with an army that's considered bad, but you shouldn't be considering that like the end all be all. Like I played Night Haunt, the current General's Handbook. Like I haven't played Night Haunt since then, and I quite frankly don't really know what I can do with them yet. But like before that, they were still considered like tier 3 or worse, and like did pretty well with them, like won a GT about a year ago with them, like a year and about 11 and a half months ago. And so it's like, you know, you can still do pretty well with like an underslung army or an undervalued army, but that doesn't mean that like that's the end all be all. Like you can do just as, and it doesn't also mean that you're playing like you're as good a general, because like I make fuck ups all the time. So you can play as like a really good army and do poorly. You can play as a really bad army and do well, but there's some balance in between, right? So
there's less forgiveness with the less powerful army.
That's correct.
But anyways, so I've had some conversations, and he earlier did have a lot of stats around player skill as it applies to, as opposed to army. Army faction.
Sorry, everybody. The rest of the crew will just go ahead and
Sorry,
mute our mics.
we're not
lose
going to mention it. We're not going to mention it. It's for Patreon subscribers to say that.
OnlyFans.
Oh, would that be?
No. But
Garrett, you were saying.
Yes, you were saying.
I was saying how he has had earlier stats about trying to figure out a way to take player skill into account on army performance, and this idea of older non-high performing factions, but certain players can take them to wins, I think is a very important message that is being missed in this whole conversation. Because yes, while certain factions do win that normally don't, it's because they're piloted by people who win regardless of faction.
So it's kind of like every 6 months when like Halo, for example, which I really appreciate his videos, but when he does like a like faction synopsis video and it's 25 minutes long, and the first 6 minutes he finishes up every single faction of the game, then there's a 1 minute pause and he goes, so hey, are you Mod Tribes players still here? Let's talk Mod Tribes. Like, you know, and because he's a Mod Tribes player, so he like goes in and talks about like competitive ogres, like how to do best despite being a very difficult faction to do well in, you know. So like at best you have to play incredibly finesse to get like anywhere with that. So I get what you mean.
Yeah, it's just Jeremy's pulling from this guy's data, and at least from his earlier data perspectives. I don't know about I haven't looked at some of his more modern analysis, but in the past he was looking at analyzing player skill versus army performance. He had some graphs that were like actually showing, as a player played certain factions, how did their personal record.
That's really interesting.
And so he saw that certain players, you know, regardless of faction, did well. And so I think that goes in to show that it's like, yeah, certain factions, even if you play these normally poorly performing factions, certain players will still pilot them to success. Because like Alex was saying, he played Night Haunt to success, but that's because Alex has trained with Night Haunt for a long time and proven that as a general he can bring Night Haunt to success, and maybe not as indicative of Night Haunt stats as a whole. So
yeah, I thought Night Haunt was OP, but honestly, playing Alex, and then I play other people with it, and I realize it's not.
Yeah, it's like don't use Alex's record as an indication of how good Night Haunt is.
This is not as though I don't beat myself on the fucking anvil that is Jeremy, for the record, but like, it is what it is.
It's like don't use a top player's record as an indication of how well a faction is played. Because I mean, this is going back to like 5th edition, 7th edition 40K of like, certain people are always going to be at the top. I mean, even 8th and 9th edition 40K, there are particular players who are at the top.
But even Age of Sigmar doesn't have that thing like one of the most demoralizing things of, I think maybe like 6th edition or like late 5th edition 40K was like, oh, you have that one army list? There's nothing I can do. This is a bad matchup for me, and I'm going to lose.
That was 6th edition. That was like all
yeah. So it was like, oh, great. There's fucking literally nothing I can do, therefore I'm gonna lose. But like in Age of Sigmar, it's like even if you have a bad matchup, it's like you can still kind of like pull yourself out, whether it's through the double turn or whether it's through like playing the mission, you know. So like there's a lot there.
I would say though honestly, in this last year and a half or so, I think there's a few armies that rose high enough in power that broke that, like to where you could say, prior to that, in Age of Sigmar, even with almost any matchup, well played versus good dice, you had a good chance. But honestly, with some of the OP Slanesh that was coming out up through December and stuff like that, that was just that next power level to where it took it beyond that. Where I'm going to say it, mediocre players could do very well, and good players became untouchable.
But then they had the winter FAQ, which nerfs like the GW has put a
they have seasons of problems, right?
Yeah.
Seasons.
So it's we're in a weird morphing where 2019 was a year where 12 to 13 battle tomes came out. So it's like,
yeah, that's right. You got to keep your mind on that.
Yeah. So 2020 is a year where we've had three battle tomes come out.
One came out twice.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So go ahead.
I do want to expand on a little bit. Is much like 40K, AOS goes through in waves of what I call imperfect balance, where like the game revolves around throwing things into the mix that are not necessarily balanced, but imbalanced, so that they can be corrected after a broader sample size of games has been played. It comes down to the fact that the rules writers and the miniature design team both do things which they think are cool, innovative, and and introducing some new life into the game in some form or another. Balance is not necessarily the primary discussion on both of those, right? Balance is maybe the third point of discussion or the fourth point of discussion. It's down the line, right? It's evaluated at a later date. And unfortunately, most of the time, balance gets evaluated after the release in its final form. So at the end of the day, it's, the key takeaway here is no king stays forever in AOS or 40K meta.
I think gold can stay.
That's right.
Is that saying? I like that. Where's
really?
that from?
Are you can't what? That's not, I don't know where it's from. It's just a comment.
It's an idiom.
It's an idiom. Yes. It's an idiom.
No, I love it. That's now one of my idioms.
Oh my God, if you've never heard that. Oh, wonderful.
No. And I'm the king of idioms. I love it.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So my point was that we've had some egregious book this year. One of them was, yes, we had a book that was released twice. We also had a book that was released badly, then addressed again, became too strong, will probably be readdressed by the end of the year.
Who is that?
Caradon Overlords. And then we've had a book that came out that needs to be addressed and was not addressed in a real way, except for
name the names.
Sorry. I'm sorry, mister. You can't pick up on these innuendo and
I can pick up on them, but maybe our audience can't. So
I have no clue. I'm lost.
John's lost. Illuminate.
People are listening to our episodes every week. Seraphons are the other book that's egregious.
Yeah.
Of course. Zinch already kind of got their treatment. Like they basically got their dosage.
Barely got their treatment.
Barely. I preface this as kinda. I did not say they got their.
Okay, I was about to say what.
Only relative to what these other two battle tomes are doing right now.
Right.
Yeah. So they got brought down to the other top level. My bad. They went from S tier to A tier. Oh.
There's no tiers in AOS. There's just imperfect.
No,
balance.
there's no.
Yeah.
And then with Sons of Behemoth coming out in the next few months now, it's been kind of official.
They told us today that it's not a fairy tale and that, in fact, it was coming with like a literal like Jack and the Beanstalk book kind of thing.
And a model that everybody gets to use with every faction.
Well, more than one. There'll be at least two.
Three. There's three.
Oh, there's three.
There's three models. There's three models. And that's the best part is that like we know that one of the models is only allowed as allies to order and destruction. And I'm sure there's going to be another one that's going to be
death and destruction,
and then chaos and destruction.
Yeah, I don't even care about running that. I am looking forward to painting and building that model. Like all that giant flesh is just a playground for
Are you going to buy all three variants?
Yeah, I'm ridiculous always.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You're going to be a Gargant player. Buy all 3 variants plus 3 of the mini ones.
Well, we already, yeah, exactly. A 2K army or a 1990 or 1980 is all 3 of the big new the Sons of
the old
Behemoth,
ones.
and then 3 regular Gargants.
I'm worried that they are going to replicate the same problem Imperial Knights had when they first came out in 40K last year.
Oh, shocking! You think that they're going to do that?
It's going to be, but like
Okay.
this year has been like, I will say last year's, even though we had 12 releases and some of them were egregious, the meta and the balance never felt that far off each other. And maybe because it was a continuous like arms race and every month something was stronger and it was continuously stronger. So it made it like felt like it was like normalized.
Slaanesh really threw a wrench into
No,
things for
not
a long
Slaanesh.
time.
Not Slaanesh.
Last
The
year.
White Dwarf release of Slaanesh was
No, Slaanesh.
Yes. No.
it
Garrett,
was the
Nah.
White Dwarf.
Garrett,
No, okay, no, you guys, no, you're both right because Slaanesh was too strong, and then we had the nerf of their summoning points that made Slaanesh correct.
And
But at the
then-
same time, we got the White Dwarf that broke it again.
There we
Like,
go.
so,
That is what it is. It's Slaanesh, when they first released, had a long reign. And then they got nerfed, and then the White Dwarf just brought them back.
I mean, you guys are not
having to
wrong.
play
I'm just
against-
pointing out that the White Dwarf book that came out effectively nullified the nerf and then made it actually even better. They made summoning points even better. So it was just it was once again an example of imperfect balance where the adjustment was made after the book was already in print because they already printed the White Dwarf at this point, and then didn't think about fixing that White Dwarf release.
oh
So
shit,
it was
I never
just like-
thought of that detail. Yes.
So like it comes down to the fact that like Games Workshop is not interested in balancing books upon release. It's interested in balancing books after release, and that's okay. That's not a critique of their operation. It is Garrett, because to be honest,
You almost said Alex. What the fuck?
I said, I'm sorry, Garrett. I see him
heard
shaking
it.
his head. It is perfectly okay because Games Workshop is not the hive mind of hundreds of thousands of players. It's one company with a rules design team. And the only way for them to actually get a good idea of like if what they release is balanced or not is when it's let go in the public and they basically have a giant sample size data and some complicated information.
Yeah.
to make
And I want to add it in is there are other tabletop miniature war games. There are tabletop miniature war games with multiple factions. There is no other tabletop miniature war game in the world that compares in complexity to either Warhammer 40K or Warhammer Age of Sigmar. These are as far as I can tell, literally 2 most complex tabletop miniature non-role-playing games that exist. In fact, I mean, there are super complex role-playing games. There are super complex computer games. But as far as what we're talking about, this type of game, there's nothing with this diversity. Now, yes, there are cheaper math engines. I know of aircraft games with incredible math engines behind them and chit-based games, but they don't have the miniature lines behind them. And I know where you're going, Eric, and Garrett, I want to hear what you're saying on it. I don't know what Eric
Everybody's
was.
getting him off.
There's an Eric, new host Eric, everyone.
Yeah, there's a host Eric. But it starts with the miniatures, and nobody has a miniature line like GW. And then you put the game behind it, and nobody has the one that goes behind that. Garrett, you're dying. Speak, my
All
friend.
right, so yeah, I'm dying here. So first of all, yeah, I'll agree.
Called it 911.
Yeah, no one has a miniature line like Games Workshop. I will agree with that. Nobody has their current model range that they're pushing out. I like. There's a lot of good companies out there. Nobody compete with the miniature line that GW is pushing out there. They have recognized that they have competitors and they have brought back. They've decided to push the envelope and they have pushed hard. Lots of new kits, lots of high quality kits. Great. Complexity, there are other complex games in the game in the skin. I don't know if they're good. I wouldn't say they're good, but I know that there are other games. out there. I don't know them because I haven't paid attention to them. But
Doesn't matter.
I'm sure
They don't matter. They don't matter. What is
Yeah,
it, War
I'm sure
Machine?
there's another game out there, some niche tabletop game that
It's a
is
niche game?
unbelievably more complex.
Magic the Gathering.
Oh, okay.
Well, Magic, it's not but a miniature.
Ninth Age Subhumans.
Yeah. Like
I said it.
I bet there's like I haven't looked at Kings of War. I don't know, but I bet there is a game more complex than 40K and Age of Sigmar because
it is. It's those like tactical World War II.
Hold on, Alex. Let me talk.
People 50 up who go to Denny's and get the fucking golden.
Can I mute Alex?
Menu.
I wish I could. I tried.
I just want to say, I know that there's more complex games because Games Workshop has put an effort into streamlining their games comparatively to their previous editions.
Yeah.
And I know other people have done other jobs.
Your entire point is fair and adequate, but at the end of the game, then nobody gets excited about a balanced game.
Okay, so now I'm going on to the balance part.
Yeah.
So Jeremy brought up the point of he doesn't care that GW brings out unbalanced rules because there's a million people who correct them. I would half-heartedly agree, like, fine, sure, whatever, if GW was more aggressive with their FAQ and errata engine. Like, I wish if they were more aggressive with their engine of saying, fine, you guys play tested the crap out of our shitty rules for 2 months, we'll update everything again. Yeah, fine, whatever. You guys can bring out stupid, broken rules that don't matter because in 2 months we'll fix them. But the fact that it takes 6 months, 4 months, whatever, like,
that's okay.
No, it's not okay. At this point, no. At this point in the stage, I want the damn Omnissiah app where I just push the button and I go, Omnissiah, how does this rule work?
And it talks to you in just nothing
Also,
but binary.
Omnissiah, this rule is broken. Please address and get back to me in 2 weeks.
Omnissiah, how does my toaster work? And it's just like praising Omnissiah using accents.
But to Garrett's point, that like they internally probably do that. But you don't want to create an environment where you have to depend on the fact every 2 weeks to know if you're or every 2 months to know if your army is like playable or not.
I know.
I think twice a year is very good because I've been playing this game for almost 20 years and shit, 3rd edition, 5th edition, 40K, like you had like 3 books a year at best and nothing changed for almost a year and a half.
It's just really frustrating when you get a January release that fucks the whole system until you're scheduled this July FAQ. Like, it's really frustrating when you have an entire 6-month window.
Which is why White Dwarf armies should not exist anymore. They always
not even a White Dwarf issue.
They always give them
the Seraphon book gets released in January and just screws
the
whole system
Seraphon
for
book
6
was
months.
released in March, sir.
Was it March?
Yeah, it was
absolutely
March.
3 months
okay,
in the year.
Then we had 3 months of March to July, March to June. And then we now have to wait till December before we can see another fix for Seraphon.
Look, they have the perfect solution, guys, and you guys are missing the whole thing right here. Is it's all 4 of us have solved this problem.
That's
you have to play Age of Sigmar and 40K because when one is in ascendance, the other is in decline. Exactly. And when that one finally peaks, the other begins to come back up. And if you play both games, you always have something cool going on.
What John said totally fits in line. I do have to say beyond that, Seraphon is a fucking toolkit, but I will say, having played Seraphon, having experimented with different styles, it's not the fuck shit that it used to be. You just have to make Croak more expensive. That's all. Because I'm not even getting to experiment.
But that's my point, is that we want Croak more expensive. Why do we have to wait until December for that to happen?
More expensive. I want Skinks to be more expensive.
Yeah, well, okay, we want Skinks more expensive. Why do we have to wait
70 points and 4 wounds, sir. I will fucking die on this hill having played with Skink Priest. They are cheap.
Either way, like, we all know there's a problem with Seraphon. Why do we have to wait till December for that? Like, why can't GW just come out and be like, we fucked up again?
Because they have rules that they set for themselves for exact schedules of when you should expect rules changes. They're not going to change that for you.
It was only, what, 5 years ago? Not even 5 years. 3 years ago, they were okay with doing a biannual, like, release of correction.
Yeah, and they were just like, fuck off what you think.
Like, 30-plus years of, like, rules writing. They're like,
hey, be grateful. Be grateful. and eat your shit.
I am the first person who will defend the GW when it comes to people, bitching about GW messing up.
So this is just your devil's advocate moment.
This is my devil's advocate.
God,
This is my devil's advocate moment.
that's not what 2020 needs.
Fall in line, Garrett.
is if GW really wants to be the balance engine that it should be,
but it doesn't.
Just let me talk. If GW really wants to be the balance, the balance engine,
I think that's the title of the episode.
To satisfy the competitive nature that its current fan base is, they need to have a more aggressive errata schedule. Where they
at what point in your day did you realize that Games Workshop would make a balanced rule set?
Well, I know they're not. It's not a matter of what I know they will do. It's what I want them to do.
What I will say to interject here is that they're not making a balanced rule set. Games Workshop has never made a balanced rule set, and it's not sustainable, nor is it in their return on investment to make a balanced rule set. What I will say, however, is that we've all been having a lot of fun, whether it's Garrett, your COVID TTS events, whether it's any of us getting our random games, our random live streams, etc. But besides all of that, hey, Garrett, I like your fucking, yeah, exactly, we're doing that. Garrett, I like your map. I like the map that you and your wife made. It's looking great. I've been listening to a podcast called Newcomers lately, which is Nicole Byer and another comedian, and they do nothing but get into a new fandom for each season. So they got into Star Wars the first season. Second season, they're getting all into Lord of the Rings. So I've been I've had a LOTOR on the mind today because I listened to the latest episode. And it's it's really funny to see them they always have a fan on. So they get more insight as to what's going on. And they always mispronounce shit. But that being said, it is a shit sandwich. But you know what? The meta might be a shit sandwich, but we're all eating it. And if you put enough cheese on it or something like that, whatever your alternative is, hummus or something like that for me and Joe Cryer, whatever the fuck. But we're going to enjoy it.
The only way to rescue a shit sandwich is lots of hot peppers.
Yes, actually, lots of hot peppers, which John has graciously shared with all of us, I believe. Hot peppers, his mild peppers, they're all great. I wish that the harvest was good enough for Jamie got really into gardening, my fiance. I really wish that we were able to produce enough to be able to ship out to people. We had a bunch of tomatoes and we were excited, but a weird condition happened with our tomato plant, which didn't make it realistic, which was unfortunate. But besides that, we want to, of course, review and take a look at Age of Sigmar and seeing how things are going today. And of course, Garrett, you have some obvious opinions on Age of Sigmar today, which is fine, which is great, which is perfect. But we were able to take a look, and there was an event that happened in Scotland, everyone. And it was an event that had some very unique winners that were outside of the meta, that were outside of what we would typically consider to be top tier, which was not Seraphon and not Tzeentch and not Bone Reapers, which, by the way, as a total side tangent, prior to this episode being recorded, or maybe during, depending on when I decide to start the recording, we had talked about World of Warcraft having some sort of essentially Bone Reaper equivalent. And since then, Garrett and Jeremy, you have both sent photos related to what that new faction is, whatever the fuck they're called for World of Warcraft, that is totally ripping off Bone Reapers. I can't
100%.
I can't not see a Bone Shaper, for the record. Yeah. What were they called again? Were they literally called Bone something?
No, they're called Necrolords from Maldraxxus.
Necrolords. Okay. Like Death Lords, which is previously
I thought Warcraft had a long history of whether it's
Games Workshop.
Whether it's ripping off GW or kind of more of mutual combined ripping off of fantasy relative to Tolkienism.
TLDR, Warcraft was a game made with the IP of Warhammer, but GW pulled out last minute, and Blizzard had a game that they had finished but couldn't release because of IP, so they renamed everything. So the original Warcraft game is actually an IP Warhammer game.
Exactly.
It was one of the first Games Workshop video IP games ever made, but due to Games Workshop having cold feet, backing out, ended up leaving the studio, which is now Blizzard, with a game that they had completely finished but could not release because of.
Oh wow, yeah.
So that's why the Warcraft 1 lore is like super generic, but Warcraft 2 lore is like super in depth and amazing.
Yes. Dude, there was a literal copyright battle that happened in the 90s and Games Workshop won it. Because they were just like, well, fuck it, we're going to release the game anyways. And they released the game, and Games Workshop was like, hold on now, what the fuck's going on? And Games Workshop won. But then the IP was able to continue. So, are where we are. Shocking.
So anyway, these Necrolords from Maldraxxus, the facial structure of that lord look eerily like Mortek guards and Ozark Bone Reapers. In fact, their leader gives me a lot of like Katakros vibes as well. So
yes, the Bone Reapers from Algonquin were able to look very similar to Bone Reapers.
So the point I was like, I thought it was both cool and kind of weird because they've been working on this expansion for 2.5 years now. And Games Workshop's probably been working on Ozark Bone Reapers for model-wise for probably the same amount of time. So I'm wondering if maybe some of their design teams were just chatting up with each other, because it's not that unlikely that a bunch of Warhammer design people play World of Warcraft and a bunch of World of Warcraft people play Warhammer.
That would not be shocking at all.
Of course they do. Of course they do. And you know what? Whereas it's honestly nowadays, it's almost guaranteed that a bunch of GW people probably play World of Warcraft more than it is Blizzard Entertainment people playing Warhammer. Let's face it.
Probably. Yeah, actually. Yeah.
All right. So, in other news, let's talk about the Scottish event and how it did.
Okay,
because,
fine.
How you did, Jeremy, at the Scottish event?
Well, like many phases of the moon, it's time to be a new moon.
Thank you. I have been trying for good hard
to shine some.
All I care about is how close are they to the actual Glenlivet distillery?
Not close enough, apparently. They were able to score events.
I actually don't know if you don't have an Excel. So.
I listened to nothing. So last night I watched a bunch of early 2000s and late 90s music videos with my fiance, and she's very much into like pop, hip hop, R&B. And I thought it was very funny that in a song that has Nelly and Kelly Rowland from Destiny's Child, that she gets really upset at one point in the music video, and she's looking at her like flip phone, and a guy hasn't texted her back, and it's literally an Excel spreadsheet on a Bluetooth. I mean, on a cell phone. Just I don't know Bluetooth. I don't know why I said Bluetooth, but it's on like a cell phone, and it's like an Excel thing, and it's like, dude, why, in what fucking world? But anyways, the train of thought that I had was totally lost me.
I'm picturing like an early 90s flip phone with an Excel spreadsheet on it. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, that's got to be a Sony phone.
I'm thinking of
BlackBerry.
BlackBerry.
They were the only ones with capabilities like that back then.
It was like a BlackBerry, and this made me think of the fact that the British meta, like Garrett had mentioned prior to the recording today, they don't use tabletop TO, nor do they use best host pairings. Not sure why. As much as I want to make fun of them for it, call them subhumans, call them whatever, doesn't matter, because that's not right. That ain't cool. I will say that they got to use something, because XL ain't gonna work. Like, it's cool, but like I already experienced 2004. I don't need to experience 2004 again. Like, nope. We're in 2020. We're about to encounter 2021. Like, get with the picture, you guys. Like, Windows 10 is not that difficult. I'm sure you can figure something better out. That being said, there was an event that happened, and it was in Scotland, as Garrett and Jeremy both mentioned. And there was a really unique event there, and it was done by the Northern Invasion GT. It was Northern Invasion 2020. In 2019, they had a lot of people. In 2019 rather, they had a lot of people. In 2020, they had fewer people, but they had still a pretty good showing due to COVID. But the top three players, or the top three placing factions, were in order from first to third: Big Waaagh, Fire Slayers, and Caradron Overlords. So I looked at this event, and I looked at number one in the form of Big Waaagh in particular, because we had already talked about this in the last few episodes. But not only did Jeremy and I play a live stream event or a live stream game where I played Big Waaagh and Jeremy played Sylvaneth, but I got my twin brother into Big Waaagh, and we Jeremy, of course, donated some art boys. I had bought my brother a few characters. And so like we really got him revved up. I even hit up our good friend of the podcast, Frank, who lives in Southern California, to like show him the ropes. I told him where the neighborhood that my brother's going to be living in LA. He was like, oh yeah, I could totally meet up with him. And here's this, and this game store. And we'll be able to, I can show him these game stores and we can get him going. So I'm like, perfect, wonderful. But, I've had Big Waaagh on the mind, and I've talked to a few people lately, especially even today, about Big Waaagh. And it's interesting that they won with a very particular list, because I was even talking to someone today about the fact that about what would be considered a good, effective Big Waaagh list. And I was very much an advocate of what Jeremy has previously said, not only today, not only recently, but many moons ago in an episode far earlier than this, even a Wide World of Wargaming episode, in fact. And it was all about infantry heavy Big Waaagh list. And at the time, way earlier in the year, Jeremy had mentioned playing a Riptide GT, or the Riptide major event that he and I both went to. And he had played against a friend of the podcast, Matthew Kangster. And he brought an all infantry heavy Big Waaagh list. It was 4 war chantas, 1 prophet, 1 shaman, and then 45 ard boys, and 3 units of 15 ard boys, and then 2 units of 10 ard boys in an ard fist battalion with one of the war chantas, which is pretty fucking stellar. That when you want board control, you go and get board control that way. But looking at the event that got first place here, it's art boys got more expensive in the General's Handbook, but this guy clearly got first place, and he was going in a very similar direction. So I wanted to talk about that today, because the individual, unfortunately, don't have their name. So if anyone has their name, let us know. I'd be more than happy to give them a shout out. But the allegiance was Big Waaagh. It was Mortal Realm Shyish, which is not shocking. There was a Weird Knob Shaman as the general, with bursting with power command trait, and a Shamastic skull cape as the artifact. He had the big old hand of Gork, which is not surprising. He then had 2 separate war chantas. One of them had the Gravesand Brute, which is reroll 1s to armor save for Shyish. He then had an Ardfist battalion with one of those 2 war chantas, in addition to 1 unit of 20 ard boys, 1 unit of 3 units of 15 ard boys, and 1 unit of 10 ard boys. And that brought him to 2,000 points on the dot with 168 wounds. So we want to talk board control. That's some board control right there. But it's not earning us a lot of Waaagh points at the same time. So I thought that was really interesting here.
No, that list is earning a lot of Waaagh points.
Yeah, the bunch of war chantas do a lot of.
Yeah.
Each war chanta gives you 2 Waaagh points a turn.
Let me rephrase it. You don't earn a lot of Waaagh points without using a command ability, because I would only see
which you never
5
will.
command points.
The command
Or 5
ability.
Waaagh points.
But this is the best way to get Waaagh points, right?
Yes.
Bodies on the ground. Is like he's generating D6 plus 5, and then he's got 78 models on the table, so he's getting another 7. So it's
5 to 7, yeah. So he's at like 12 Waaagh points turn 1.
So he's already to fill up
plus D6. He's 12 plus D6.
Well, that's assuming he gets all 70 within range of the command ability.
It's really
basically on turn 2 he has whatever he wants.
Yeah, he has 20 on turn 2.
And frankly, with the amount of bodies he has in this list, I mean, you're right. I would use the command ability turn 1 if you got it, but it would only take 2 turns to already hit, like, to easily max out. You don't have to go for as many as you want. You can hold back, take some models out of the coherency, and you're still pretty good. You're still really good.
Spend some of those Waaagh points, maybe.
You would only need to do it for the one caster.
The interesting thing I find is previously, pre-GHB 2020, most Big Waaagh lists were in Shaiish due to getting the Ethereal Amulet. And then most Big Waaagh lists are continuing to be Shaiish to get to reroll ones on saves. Like, that's what I just find really amusing, is that it's like most Big Waaagh armies just, fuck it. We just will always be from Shaiish. Why not?
That is considering the idea of making sure that you have something that's really hardy that can reroll ones to save, like a Maw Crusher. So I'm actually relatively curious that he has that, because he gives it to a War Chanta. You know, that's not exactly what we would consider the hardiest thing. I would rather probably use an artifact from the Orc Warclans Battle Tome. Doesn't actually, there's Shaman only for Ironjaw's units, Ironjaw heroes. There's Wash Shaman only, and then there's Mega Boss only.
Yeah, there's nothing for War Chantas.
There's actually nothing for War Chantas. So frankly, I would either make the general Shaman, I would make him the general, and then actually give him something that might be, you wouldn't?
No.
Well, I wonder if Realm of Fire would be interesting, because those War Chantas they already have on 6s to hit generate an additional hit, and they can get the extra Realm of Fire relic.
Guys,
to get another hit.
It's very simple. He gave reroll once to the War Chanter in the battalion, because if he dies in shooting or whatever, he can't use the Hard Fist Battalion mechanic anymore.
That's true.
It comes down
That's
to that.
true.
He's fetching for an extra little bit of durability because there's literally no better relic you can give to a War Chanta. So you're basically stuck with that one. It's
not exactly what we consider the hardiest unit.
Well, no, they're not.
But it's not that the fact that they're not the hardiest unit. It's just that getting rerolls 1 to save is the hardiest ability
you can give to that
guy. It's like it's just a matter of like, of all of the relics he has available to him from everything, all the realms and all of his Ironjaw's relics, real 1s to saves is the one relic he can give that is the best way to keep his guy alive that he wants to keep alive.
Yeah, most consistent.
Yeah, I will make one critic. I will make one criticizement about his list. So
critique
of his list. This is where
is that a French word?
Talking.
This is what is that French for?
It is actually a French word, but this is just the gin starting to talk now. Love me some George gin. He picked Soul Snare Shackles as his endless spell because he was 40 points under. I actually think the
Palisade?
No. The Burning Head would be better.
Really?
Because the Burning Head has an AoE 9-inch aura, reroll 1s to hit. So if you're hitting on 2s, and it's the only way you're gonna get reroll 1s to hit in an Orc army, and it's 30
That's
points.
a good point.
And it
does D3 mortal wounds.
It does D3 mortal wounds, which also helps you get the extra movement early in the game.
Ooh.
It can affect your
wow.
Because the laugh, or was it called like "Here We Go" or something? I forgot the name.
Yeah.
Okay. So I call it "fuck off" because it's called "zog off."
Yeah.
So I just want to just for the people who are in the not know, I'm going to summarize Jeremy's strategy here. So basically, Ironjaw. Actually, no, Jeremy, that is an Ironjaw only rule. I do not believe Big Waaagh.
It's a Big Waaagh rule.
Big Waaagh has it,
when you get to 8 Waaagh points, I believe.
6.
Okay.
6.
Okay.
6. Yeah, 6.
So Big Waaagh. I'm going to confirm real here because I actually don't believe him.
It's called Zog off.
Now you keep talking, Garrett. No looking up while you're talking.
Let's
run your mouth,
music.
boy. Run your mouth, boy. Be wrong.
Yeah, number 6. Or 6 points, whatever it's called. It's Zog off. I'm pretty sure Alex is right. Because the first time you read it, you're just like, does that really mean fuck off? Like,
yeah, I was like, no, it totally means fuck off.
So it's you need 4 Waaagh points, by the way. It's the first one.
4 Waaagh. Okay.
It keeps getting better. I started
at
6.
Started at 8, went to 6, is now down to 4. So Ironjaws and Big Waaagh get this ability where at the end of any phase, if a unit takes damage, they may move d6 inches as long as they are farther than 9 inches away from enemy models.
12.
So the strategy is that you cast an endless spell that does d3 mortal wounds to any unit it hovers over, not just enemies, and you hit your own unit with like, hey, a burning head does d3 mortal wounds to my 15-man orc mob. Like, oh no, I might kill an orc. Like, big fucking deal. And
Here's
then
the question: when does
you,
that
at
occur?
the end of your hero phase, because they took damage in your own hero phase,
Mhm.
they get to move d6 inches, and then you get to move them in your movement phase, and
Yep.
then you get to charge. So it's you could just like run that burning head across 3 units, move
I like
all
that,
of them
but-
6 inches in your hero phase, and then move them in the movement phase. It's just a nice way to add movement to your army by attacking your own models in your own hero phase. That
Yeah,
is
I
the
like that, but
strategy Jeremy was referring to with the
Yeah.
burning head.
Garrett, the one thing to miss that you're missing though is that if you have an Iron Jaws army or a Big Waaagh army that's primarily Iron Jaws based, you're going to have a shaman who's going to be able to for free cast Green Puke, which is a 2d6 inch ability.
Yeah, so you can hit multiple of your units.
I mean, it doesn't matter because the Zoggoth is done at the end of the phase, so it doesn't matter if you use the burning head or the green puke. Either way, it's just another way that you can damage your guys. And
It's twofold, right? Because the first time Alex did the green puke, he rolled like a 2-inch range on it.
Yeah, it was
And
awful.
only got hit like 1
Yeah.
unit. At least the
Yeah.
burning head is consistent. And then
Yeah.
only that, in the second half of the game, it can function as a reroll one
Reroll
hit
one
for your
mechanic.
units, which
Yeah.
is
Jimmy,
actually-
you missed it. You missed it when my brother was playing with Green Puke. I was trying to explain him to him the mechanic, and he was rolling fucking crazy high. He was rolling like 9-10 inch fucking 2d6 rolls. So I was like, oh hey, you can hit 3 units. You want to make them take d3 damage? He's like, yeah, like let's fucking do it.
So
Yeah.
I think what Jeremy's like saying. So one of my original problems with the burning head is its short casting range because you only can summon it like within 6 and then move it like 9 or something, and so it's like really hard to actually do well. But when you're actually wanting to target your own guys and then move it in aggressive range to give a 9-inch bubble of reroll 1s to hit, it's actually a very effective tool for an Iron Jaws army because you hit your own models, make them move d6 inches, and then now that Burning Head is in position to be within 9 inches of your enemy to give your guys a reroll 1 to hit from the Burning Head. So that's the big strategy. Jeremy was like, the shackles are cool, but a Burning Head adds a lot of shenanigans to your army that an opponent wouldn't expect.
Garrett,
Yeah.
do you have Buick-sized grasshoppers in
Yes.
your backyard?
Yes.
Yeah. They're about the size. They're literally about 2 inches.
I hate everything about that.
Also,
We should
Yeah.
actually try to calculate the temperature off of his chirping crickets. That would be fun. You guys used to do that as a
Yeah.
kid?
I know.
No!
So
We
John.
know. Yeah,
John.
laying at night, listening to the crickets chirp outside, and then figuring out what the temperature is by their
John,
chirping rate.
I have crickets they work their way through my window cracks, and I have crickets jump around in my basement, and they're sometimes living in my laundry room. And so when I come down in the basement, I hear crickets chirp inside my house, not from the out. These are ones that are outside. I actually get crickets chirping.
sounds like you need an iguana in your house.
Yeah, or
I
a
think it-
chameleon or some shit. I don't fucking
no,
know.
a gecko, a house gecko. You could literally let a
house-
house gecko loose in your house. It would run around on the walls, eat all the crickets. It'd be perfect. If not, go to Nature's Good Guys. That's where I
Yours is
go to
good.
get my beneficial insects. In fact, you're gonna amaze. Right before we recorded tonight, I actually got a shipment of 30,000 wasp pupa of 3 different species of wasp, as well as 2 different vials of live adult wasps
I hate
that I
all of
released in
this.
my garden. So like right before we recorded, I went all through my garden, all the peppers, and I hung up little cardboard strips that had the wasp pupas on it that'll hatch into little micro wasps, and those eat all the caterpillars that eat my peppers and tomatoes and stuff. And then I'm having a problem this year with what are called leaf miners. They're like they're flies, but they lay their maggots, and the maggots actually burrow inside the leaves of the peppers. And so what you do is you have these vials of these live wasps that you kind of like at evening time. So it's right before we recorded. You take the vial off, and I just kind of slowly walk through the pepper garden. And they're cool because these wasps are like metallic iridescent, and they just very slowly hover out of this vial. So you take the top off, and then they just, these little sparkling little rainbow, look like almost little fairies, just start going, and just like slowly kind of hover out and just kind of spread out and go into all the peppers and find all the little nasty bugs and lay their stuff. But it's really cool. It's like you're releasing little elven fairies, little or elf fairies into the air as they go. So it's pretty cool.
To get back on topic.
There was no topic. There was no topic. There was no topic, Jeremy.
Get back on the
topic. Don't you understand,
Jeremy?
Jeremy? That was me trying to bring this freaking bus to an end. I was pulling the brakes, man. I was pulling the emergency brake. Alex, bail us out of here. Take it away, Alex.
I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to, but I do want to hear Jeremy out one final time.
No, I was just gonna say if you switched the Burning Head, he would have been 10 points under, and he could have at least fished for some triumph. That's it.
Actually,
that's it, folks.
Big Waaagh is
That's all, folks.
Big Waaagh is a bit of a mixed bag. There's a lot of weird stuff to go into it.
God damn it, Alex.
the more I test things out, the more interested I am in Big Waaagh. But I really can't start a new army right now. But if you guys do have a Big Waaagh army and you guys want to share some insights, some thoughts, some mechanics that aren't just herder bring war cabbage, then do share it with us, and like and subscribe, give us a review, rate us whatever you want to rate us. Let us know what you guys like, what you guys don't like. If it's a interesting review, we'll certainly review it on this podcast. And yeah, we are on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you get your podcasts, in terms of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or otherwise. Every other week we are on Frontline Gaming's roll, so do be sure to look out for us, and have a good night.
Yeah, we don't actually need honest reviews right now. We need 5 stars, likes, and pretend that we're good and say nice things, because we're trying to attract listeners.
If it was a 50
that's
page,
it. Yeah, that's what it is. I don't want your opinion. I just want you to say nice things.
If it was a 50-page fanfic that was hypersexualized, we'll probably still read that. Yeah.
Also, Alex,
Please
I don't want
that.
you to forget that we also have a Patreon page where you'll gain access to our wonderful Discord server.
That's right.
And list advice from Jeremy and Alex. John and I will give you shitty list advice. Jeremy and Alex will give you real list advice.
Well,
I've already given list advice twice since we started the Patreon, and I both let them know. I was like, hey, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah. So yeah, just also want to pimp our wonderful, overhyped Patreon.
Yeah, and maybe if you're on the Patreon, then you can actually get a game in with us, maybe on TTS, or
or maybe Total War Warhammer, or maybe join a role-playing game with me, or whoever.
Or Vermintide, or they can play in Solaris, the country.
We're gonna be very sad, guys, when we realize no one wants to play with us.
no one wants to play with us.
Okay, if you're on the Patreon, you can ask us what's really being said behind the scene in the chat.
That's right.
So I'm looking right at it, and it's like, oh man, this is some MA14 shit for me. But yeah, it is something that we could definitely share with you guys and help. Upcoming. I am going to try my best to do a little bit of a live stream later this week in video game form, whether it is something like Vermintide, because Garrett, your brother, I just played some Vermintide with him last night. I got him up to level 7.
To install the 90 gigabyte game.
He had. I give him a lot of shit. He was like, "Oh no, how do I get I don't know, it was 80 gigs into his computer. I have 500 gigs totally filled." And we were like, first of all, why do you only have 500 gigs? Second of all, is this all porn? And the answer was no.
I have his gaming rig in my closet around the corner.
His
gaming computer is at my house.
Okay, this makes me mad. Okay, cool. That's good to know. Good to know.
I have his
gaming
gaming
audience
computer.
for putting up with the show and our antics. We've had a long episode.
So
I want to say thank you, good night, good luck, and stay tuned for more. This was your host, Jeremy, Alex, Garrett, and John.
Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.